guys, what's up? Long time no see, I guess. Not really if you watch most of my content, but this is I haven't done YouTube exclusive content in a while, other than that Fnatic G2 video, which you guys hated. So I'm here with YouTube exclusive content, and it's gonna be my kind of mid-season check-in on all the LCS teams. We'll be going over each team, who they are as a team, like what their identity has been, and kind of like the homework they need to do to finish really strong, or to at least like stay relevant or try to make playoff. Every team is going to have a different kind of goal. And yeah, we're going to go over each team one by one and talk about them. And we're going to go top to bottom. So you probably guessed it. We're going to start with this bad boy right here, Team Liquid. So who is Team Liquid right now? Team Liquid is probably the highest spender, and they got the most collection of talent. They are the two-time reigning champions, and they are the mega rich, the mega talented team. As a team inside the game, they are a very, very well disciplined team fighting team. They love team fighting. They love playing around bottom. They usually don't take unnecessarily risks at all, and it's been working out great for them in NA. No one can really challenge them outside of TSM and C9. And yeah, they've been overall a really, really good team. A lot of criticism regarding TL has been around probably the future of this team, whether they can do well internationally. But for now, they are almost spotless, and they've just been crushing NA. Doesn't mean they don't have homework to do, though. Their homework is playing more 1-3-1 and ending the game faster. They're so one-dimensional as a team. They're great in that style, and they're great at being that team, like playing around bottom, being a team fight team, but they're not going to improve much more doing that style. And while they might dominate NA this way, it's just not going to give them results internationally. So that's their homework. They need to push themselves to improve beyond what they've shown and actually branch out and play 1-3-1 and play more of a split push style, and also end the game much faster when they do have leads. Moving on to the second team, we have Cloud9. Who is Cloud9 as a team, and what's their expected placement? Cloud9 is, I would say, very scrappy. That might be a weird word to describe Cloud9, but they're a team that gets the most out of their roster. They're never the highest spenders, but they're always relevant. They always make worlds. They always are good whenever it counts, and I think a lot of that comes from Jack and Reaper and the experience on the team, along with players like Sneaky. They're just a team that does better than what they're expected to do given the roster they have. As for their in-game style, they are actually the most, I would say, ideal team in North America. They play a variety of style. They can win from any lane. They're very well coached. Their drafts are smart. They end the games fast when they have a lead. It just, TL has so much talent on their team, it's really hard to beat them. But overall, I do think Cloud9 is a better coach team, and I do think Cloud9 is a smarter team overall. So what are their homework? Their homework is continue refining what they have. They're on a good path. They're winning the games the right way. They need to shore up their early game a little bit, make sure it's strong, make sure it's stable. But overall, C9 just needs to continue what they're doing. For me, their expected placement is second. Even though I talk so well of them, I don't see them overtaking TL this split. They already lost a game to TL, and then they dropped that odd game to CLG, and also TSM's right behind them, and they might drop a game or so to TSM. So yeah, I don't think they're going to overtake TL, but their expected placement is still second. And then up next, we have TSM, Team Solo Mid. Who is TSM as a team? I would say TSM is a broken dynasty. They are probably the most famous North American team ever in terms of League of Legends, but they haven't really lived up to kind of the name of TSM in the last few years or so, or ever since Double left, more accurately. They were the reigning champion for such a long time, and now they were on a downswing, and this year they're finally starting to be on an upswing. So we'll see where this takes them. In terms of who they are in the game itself, who are they? I would say TSM is a team that's trying to play correctly. I would say they are more C9 than they are TL. They're trying to not just play around mid. They are trying to do different play styles. They are trying to split push. They are trying to 1-3-1, but they're so inconsistent. Like their in-game play, even though they have such shining stars like Smoothie, Zeben, sometimes they look kind of lost. Acadian definitely looks lost a lot of times. He's been getting better. Like overall, I have to say TSM is getting better, but they just have these slip ups, and also they're just not consistent. They are on the right path. They are a good team. They are probably the third best team in North America, but they still have a lot of holes in their game, which is kind of scary to say, and which is kind of also sad to say that TSM is third in North America. That's sad for TSM, and also how inconsistent they are and how they have holes in their game, but they're still third in North America. It's the sad state of NA right now. So what is their homework? Well, their homework is be consistent. They have games where they look incredibly dominant, but also games where they make a lot of early game mistakes, are terrible engages mid and late game, and lose the game outright. If you remember the week they beat Team Liquid, they actually went 2-0 that week, but the first game they played that weekend, they almost lost to Optic. And then a lot of analysts will say they should have lost to Optic too. So they can struggle versus some of the worst teams in the league while beating the best team in the league. So it's a really, really weird phase that TSM is in. They're just getting things together. And also, a huge homework of theirs is figure out what they're going to do with Grig. I think they're trying to incorporate Grig back into the lineup. He hasn't been playing all the academy games, so I'd imagine he's been sharing time with Acadian in scrims, and they're trying to figure out what to do with Grig. While Acadian has looked good, he's also looked very shaky. His champion pool has been limited. There's a lot of questions, and I'm not sure if introducing Grig will fix those problems or make those problems worse, because Acadian has been good for TSM in certain ways, but TSM probably want to do right by Grig and give him the shot at maybe taking the starter spot again. So I'm really lost. I don't have any insider info, so I'm very curious what TSM will do, but they do have a lot of things to figure out. Now, we have a pretty unexpected team at our expected placement for 4th in FlyQuest. So no one expected FlyQuest to do this well. Okay, maybe no one except for people on FlyQuest who gave me a bunch of shit for ranking them really low in my initial power rankings. They are I know I call C9 a scrappy team, but this team's even more scrappy. They're not using any of their import slots. They probably have the lowest payroll across the board for their roster in all of LCS, and they're still getting 4th, so much props to them. This is a all-NA team, sort of, with some Canadians and Lucas Santorin, who is grandfathered in. And also, I realize Canada is in North America, so I meant to say all-American. But let's get back on board. I would say this team is very not joyful, very problem-free, very easy to work around, and there's like no egos on this team, really. I think they're gonna finish 4th. I don't see them improving beyond TSM, C9, or TL, but I also don't see any of the teams below them catching up to them. So yeah, my expected placement for this team is 4th. As for who they are in game, they're actually a really strong early game team that struggles mid game a lot. They make a lot of bad decisions and a lot of independent decisions, like independent of one another mid game. Like the team will have a lead and they'll try to do too many things together, or they won't agree on what they should be doing, and they're kind of separated and they make mistakes, and then the other team catches up, or they lose a Baron, or they lose a team fight, and FlyQuest loses. They can consistently build leads, but they have huge problems mid-game that they need to fix in order for them to even try to beat the better teams. They're doing fine versus all the lower tier teams. They're one of the teams that actually actively try to 1-3-1, and Viper has been such a blessing for them. They're able to split push well. They're able to play the side lanes really well. They tend to throw a little bit at Baron, and when they do the split push, so if they can shore up those weaknesses, I can see FlyQuest being a really strong team in the future. Alright, so outside of 4th for NA, I actually think a lot of these teams are super problematic. Every single team we're going to talk about outside of FlyQuest, TL, C9, and TSM are really problematic. So yeah, oh man, NA is just in a really bad spot. Let's go to the next team, Golden Guardians. So who are Golden Guardians? Golden Guardians are the Golden State Warriors esports division League of Legends team, but they haven't really lived up to the Golden State Warriors name, and They're just one of these like middling bottom tier franchise teams that came into the league. I feel like a lot of the newer teams feel kind of the same, and Golden Guardians is kind of in that zone. In terms of who they are in game, they are a very late game focused team, and they are also a very, very one dimensional team. The only thing they can really do is put Hanser on a tank and put Froggen on a control mage and drag the game till late game, and then they can start winning team fights and win the game. It's actually really similar to how Froggen's old school teams, and pretty much how all of Froggen's teams been. The old Echo Fox roster, before that Alliance, before that CLG Europe, all of Froggen's team have been this way. As for their homework, they need to learn how to play early game. This team has no early game. They're one of the This team has no early game. They're one of the worst early game teams. Bot lane especially, they need to be a lot more consistent, especially Ole. Ole has been getting caught out so much, making really dumb blunders in lane. Like, I cannot say enough bad things about this team's early game. Also, Contracts, someone that should be a very solid player for them, someone they kept from last year, has been struggling a lot. We need to see Ole and Contracts play better for this team to win. I would actually say one of their homework should be develop another playstyle other than tank top and mage mid. But I'm not sure how feasible that is for them. Because Hunter did play some mages earlier on in the season and they just weren't able to win. And with Ole and Contracts playing this inconsistently, I'm not sure if it's feasible for them to develop another playstyle. So I would actually say they need to shore up the early game and just kind of stick to the playstyle they have if their goal is to make playoffs. If they learn other styles, they can maybe challenge the teams above them, but I just think it's really unlikely they can do anything better than 5th, and it's better for this team to actually just learn how to play the early game and still keep to kind of the playstyle they have. Okay, next up, for me, this is where a lot of people are going to actually disagree, but we have 100 Thieves in my expected placement of 6th. So who are 100 Thieves? 100 Thieves, I would say, is the coolest team in the league. They're very hype beast. Nashot, their CEO, and kind of the face of their brand. They're very cool. That's what I think when I think of 100 Thieves. They're the cool team. Like Aframu, like very swaggy, like probably like likable. They're very cool as a team, and that's kind of the image that they've been trying to build up. Unfortunately for them, 2019 hasn't been that kind, nor has later half of 2018 with all the drama with Meteos, Cody Sun, and Rikara. And they've just been on a little bit of a downswing since then. As for in-game play, oh man, this team. They actually have very, very exceptional players in Aframu, in Bang, in Someday. It's really sad to see this team be at the bottom of the league with this tier of players. And a lot of their problems come from the team just not being very together and everyone playing on their own and being very independent, especially with the mid and late game decision making. Everyone has so many different ideas on how the game should be played, and I actually think it's hurting them so much that they have so many smart players that have a good idea of how the game should be played. It's just so different from one another. So what is their homework? They need to get on the same page. They have so many shot callers and it's just not working out for them. I would love to see this team kind of keep things simple and go back to the bot lane focus, late game team fight scaling identity that they had in 2018. And while it might be a step backward in terms of learning multiple styles, it just might be better for them. This is a team with very high expectations that's done so far below their expectation, and for them to kind of recover, I would love to see them keep things simple and play a late game oriented bot play style. Kind of like what Golden Guardians has, but instead of playing around mid, you play around bottom. So now we're getting into outside of playoff bursts. These are teams that I don't expect to make playoffs. And first up, we have CLG. Their expected placement is 7th. So who is CLG as a team? So funny enough, all the old guards except for CLG are in top 3. TL, C9, TSM. CLG is the only old school team that are not holding a top tier spot right now. And I think a lot of that comes from how they dealt with their star players in the past, Doublelift, Aframu, Dardoch, Xmithie, just letting them go. And they've been very problem averse and conflict averse and not very risk takey which has left their roster in a very, very bad spot. A lot of their big pickups have really failed for them. Dardoch, Rainover, while their homegrown, internally grown, like good players, they let go because they didn't kind of want to deal with the issues of having a star player, issues of having a loud voice, or whatever reason. As for their in-game identity, they are a late-game team-fighting team that are very dependent on Tahm Kench and Sion. It's really weird to say, but they are a late-game team-fighting team dependent on Sion and Kench. And without Kench or Sion, whenever those champions are banned out, they have not done well at all, and they've actually dropped... I'm pretty sure they lost every game they haven't played Sion. So the kind of homework for the kind of homework we have for CLG is build an identity. CLG, you are a sinking ship without a solid basis to build on. We need to see strong performance from their old school members in Darshan and bot lane, but overall there's huge problems across the board. Their macro, I would say, is non-existent. This is not a good macro team. This is not a good early game team. The only thing they excel at, and the only reason why they're even relevant right now, I would say, is due to Power of Evil. Power of Evil has carried this team on its back so many times in team fights, so many times just due to counter picks. The only game where I feel like they crushed early game was when Power of Evil picked Kassadin versus Demonte's Corki, and they took over the game through that. But yeah, this team is... Man, I don't want to shit on a team, but holy shit, this team looks bad when they don't have Tahm Kench or Sion. And it's not like they have a lot of talent on the team. It's just the expectation for this team. And comparatively, all the other old school teams have been doing really well. So yeah, CLG, you guys have a lot of homework in front of you. I also not sure where this team should go in terms of direction. I still do think they should be a late game scaling teamfight team, but maybe some people will argue if Darshan returns to form, they can be a 1-3-1 team, but that's also up in the air. It's just very hard to pinpoint where this team should go. There's just so much problems. So I would say let's handle the first problem, which is how do we play teamfight comps without Tahm Kench or Sion, and that's the first thing they fix. And after that, let's see where Darshan is, if he returns to form or not. If he does return to form, maybe we could even be a 1-3-1 team. Maybe we could add that into the mix. But yeah, a sinking ship right now, and CLG, you need to start plugging holes. So the next team we have is Optic at ace. I'm not sure I would have ever placed Optic at ace looking at their roster, but this is a team that actually overperformed the roster they have and kind of the expectation that they had. Who they are as a team is Optic's one of the newer teams in the franchise. They are a very famous team in the Call of Duty and the FPS genre. Unfortunately for me, I don't really follow Call of Duty or FPS, but I still even knew of Optic and Greenwall. That's how big their fan base is, and that's how unilaterally popular they were as a team. So as for in-game, who is this team? And that's a really hard question to answer, because there's two Optics in my opinion. The Optic with Dardoch and Optic with Meteos, and they still don't know which jungler they're going to use. It's a little bit past midway of the season, and maybe it's a blessing, maybe it's a curse. You know, in football, they say if you have two quarterbacks, it's like having no quarterbacks. But for Optic, that's not the case. It's not that they don't have one good jungler. They actually have two good junglers, and they don't know which one to use, and they don't know which one to really build their team off of. And I do think that's a problem for them. Constantly switching back from Meteos and Dardoch isn't the best for Meteos, nor is it the best for Dardoch, nor is it best for Optic. So yeah, without even talking about who they are as a team, let's kind of talk about what they need to do. As we talked about, they need to figure out which jungler they're going to use. They have the best early game in the league. Actually, that might have changed with last weekend, but they still have a really good early game due to both junglers having excellent pathing. They really need to learn how to snowball. They get these early game leads, but they just throw it one after another, and a lot of their wins come off of other team playing bad and them being able to punish the really big mistakes the other team's been having. Another huge problem is communication. Crown has been a blessing for this team. I never thought Crown would do this well in NA, but his communication's pretty bad. I see Crown doing the different thing from the rest of his team all the time, and in interviews and just talking to players and coaches behind the scene, it seems like communication has been a huge problem for Optic, and that's something they need to figure out. So let's try to simplify what they need to do. First of all, they need to figure out which jungler they're going to use, and after they figure out which jungler they're going to use, they need to build the system off that jungler and really be able to snowball their early game into a good mid and late game. And lastly, their communication has to improve, and that's where a lot of their losses are coming from. Segregated decision making in mid and late game due to bad communication. So if they can shore all that up, I actually do think Optic is one of the teams that can surprise and kind of sneak into playoffs. At 9th, we have Clutch, probably the biggest disappointment of LCS so far. Clutch actually had a really great first split in LCS. I think they got 3rd or 4th with their roster, and they had a really bad summer last year. And then they had a crazy offseason where they picked up both Piglet and Huni and kept Lyra. And now they're in this pretty much like dumpster fire of a state where their roster, according to their general manager, is a high variance roster. Well, we're seeing the floor of this roster. This roster is an absolute shambles in my opinion. What to say about this roster? Huni's not really playing on form. Lyra also is not playing on form. It seems like Demonte is getting crushed by all the Koreans. While Piglet is playing on form, it's not enough. Like, who they are as a team, this is a team with a lot of strong players and no real direction and a lot of internal, I would say, dysfunction. It's not like they're fighting internally from what I heard. It's more so they can't get on the same page and they don't know what they should be doing and they can't find the direction. I feel this way about a lot of NA teams. It doesn't even matter if the direction you guys want to have is a bad direction or the most ideal. If you have one direction, at least you can direct and push your team in a certain way. This team has no direction. They're not a bot-oriented team. They're not a top-oriented team. A lot of their drafts are really bad. And their mid game is really bad. Their communication is really bad. Just so many things are bad about this team, and they have such hype players. It's just this is the accumulation of bad roster building and desperation, in my opinion. So, what is their homework? How do they need to go about fixing things? I think they need to figure out a direction, and what they are and who they are as a team really needs to be answered internally. Are we going to be a Piglet-oriented bot side team? Which I do think is the most clear direction they can go, and Piglet has been the most solid member for them. Or are we going to play the game a little bit more wider and allow split push from Huni, allow split push from Demonte? That's probably the harder of the two and harder identity to become. So for this team, I'd rather they do something super easy, which is just be a Piglet-oriented bot lane team. So let's try that, Clutch, and maybe we can sneak up a little bit, a few placements. And lastly, we have Echo Fox. This is my least favorite team in the league right now. What to say? I mean, let's try to be fair to them as much as possible. So, who are they as a team? Echo Fox is, it's owned by Rick Fox, the NBA player. You guys probably heard of Rick Fox by now. Who are they as a team? They've actually been in LCS for a very long time. They just never really found their footing. They kind of were finding their footing last year with Phoenix Stardock and Huni, but that blew up in their face. For in-game, this team I actually think can be really solid. It's just they do so much dumb things, and I think this is a team that's very badly coached. So let's start with the most obvious problems. Rush. It's really weird to say, but Rush is probably the biggest problem on this team. I disagree with so many of his builds. And I feel like he goes for outplay so many of the times. He's in the wrong place so many of the times. And jungler really is the backbone for your team in terms of early game and in terms of identity for your team. Because wherever the jungler goes decides what kind of team you are. If the jungler goes mid a lot, then you're a mid-focused team. If jungler goes bot a lot, then you're a bottom-focused team. If your jungler is passive, then you're a passive early game team. And I think a lot of Echo Fox's problems stem from Rush, and they draft a certain way. Maybe they draft a top lane carry, and they just leave the carry lane be, and they just go boss side the whole game with their jungle. And Rush has been making so much individual mistakes and getting caught out. I think a lot of their problems just stem from Rush, and if they can start fixing what they want to do with Rush and who they are as a team, and they need to fix how they are allowing Rush to play. I think there's just so much freedom on this team, and that's actually hurting this team a lot in terms of draft. Sometimes they draft too much carries. It feels like, oh damn, a player should have blind picked a really solid tank or a really solid blind pick here, but they don't do that, and they just draft a carry for any of the players. I know I'm kind of rambling, but this team just so much problems and not very well direction. So I will say Phoenix, Apollo, Hakuo, and even Solo have been playing better than what a lot of people thought they would be playing at in terms of level. It's just Rush being a problem has really made this team very inconsistent and directionless in a lot of ways. Homework, let's fix Rush, let's fix our draft, and let's solidify what we have and try to be more consistent. Well, we covered all 10 teams. That's kind of my mid-season check-in for LCS. This season of LCS really has me worried, actually. I think the level of play from even the top teams and across the board has been really bad compared to other regions like LEC. I mean, let's not even talk about Korea and China for right now, because NA has never looked this bad compared to LEC or Europe. I know a lot of people are going to say I'm an NA fanboy, but honestly, it was always competitive between NA and Europe in terms of level of play, and this year it's just been, there's just such a gap just looking at both regions and watching the VODs. So I'm really, really scared for NA, and I hope in the latter half of 2019 spring we can fix all these problems and look good coming into MSI. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I will try to reply back to some of the comments, as long as it's not trolling or kind of garbage or kind of shitty. But yeah, I'll try to reply back to you guys. And don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe to me. Give me your subscription. Help me with my numbers. Oh yeah, one last thing. I'm not crazy. I'm just loco. Oh my god. That was so cringy. Bye.